starting with rebuilding spiritual intimacy first, because I think that especially as believers, as Christians, we believe that the Holy Spirit, like everything is done more faithfully and effectively when it's done through the Holy Spirit. And so cultivating your relationship with the Lord, investing in your relationship with the Lord, investing in your relationship with each other spiritually is going to be the best starting place.
Yeah.
Even if that isn't necessarily the root cause, I think starting there.
Hey, One Degree fam. I'm Nathaniel.
And I'm Zan. And this is the One Degree Podcast, where we talk about what it looks like to be married as followers of Jesus.
Look, we know that life gets full. Marriage, kids, work, church, sports, the list goes on and on. But we believe that a thriving marriage does not happen by accident.
Each episode will give you real conversations, practical tools, and biblical encouragement to help you connect deeply with your spouse and live on mission together.
So, whether you're folding laundry, driving to work, or maybe even working out, we're glad you're here with us.
Let's dive in.
What's up, One Degree fam?
What's up?
What's that from?
Isn't that Michael Scott from The Office?
That is it. I was about to say Mike Wazowski. I don't know why my brain crossed those wires.
I could see that, but
Do
what's
you?
up?
What's up?
Welcome back to the
Yeah, welcome back. All those
virtual,
things.
cozy leather couch.
We're recording this at the end of a week, and it's been a long week for me. And I'm like, my brain, I was just like,
A long week for both of us.
it has been a long week. Well, it's been a long week for you because it was a long week for me because kids were sick, and then I felt sick, and then Nathaniel stepped in and did all the things. And
then I went and picked up our friend from the airport at
last night
midnight.
at midnight. And
Which the Milwaukee airport is usually pretty quiet. It was bumping.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about it. 'Cause I was sick
Thursday night at midnight
Weird.
into Friday. It was the busiest I think I've ever seen it. I was like,
so
what is
interesting.
going on?
Anyone from the Milwaukee area? Let us know. I don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah, so we are recording this episode. We're going to be diving in to basically fostering intimacy. Full disclosure, we have no script. So because this has been a long week, we had multiple times where we were going to sit down to do this, but it's like, sorry, now I have a stomach bug. Now I can't stay awake. Whatever. So we're going to thankfully this is something that we do talk about a lot in our own life, but we don't even know where we're going with it because I was thinking emotional intimacy. He's thinking, of course, physical intimacy. But the reason we're talking about this is we have kind of, if you haven't realized, I don't know if I've intentionally said it out loud, but I think I have a little bit. But our episodes coming out right now, if you're listening live, are corresponding with the weekly challenges for February because we do a monthly marriage challenge as daily challenges. And we foresee doing this for the ongoing future. And so they've each week has a theme, and we have had them correspond. So we had loving your spouse how they feel loved. We had, I don't know, because my brain's not working. The first week was, I don't know. I think that loving your spouse how they feel loved, that was the second week. And the third week is more intimacy related. Are you trying to think of it too?
Yes. Yeah.
I see the blank look in your face.
But
anyway, so then we're going to talk about intimacy. So yeah, I think we'll just dive in. But like I said, we don't necessarily have an exact definition, but I think that also is part of the nuance of it. And so basically I would say this is for you it's for you if you're married, because I guarantee you felt this at some point. But especially we're going to be speaking to that idea of feeling disconnected, and then what comes from that of like feeling just disconnected and like you're just missing each other emotionally, like you're just missing some depth. Like we have that all the time, even still. Even with all the rhythms we have in place, there will be times where we're just like, after a few days, like now would be a good example of, I think we've been pretty intentional this week, even despite all of but like just weeks that are off or super busy and stuff. And it's just like we get to a Thursday night or something and we're sitting down and we're like, I just feel disconnected right now. And so we're going to kind of speak to that. And then a lot of times that then trickles into physical intimacy, feeling either strained, or if there's somebody in the marriage that is like a lower drive person and you feel there's disconnection there, then there's probably likely going to be less desire. So yeah, let's get into it.
I think it's important before we start, kind of the first thing we do to kind of define the different types of intimacy that there is.
There's
Just
lots, but
because,
maybe the ones we're going to talk
yeah,
about.
the ones that we're going to talk about. But I was just thinking of, okay, when we were talking about this episode and we were talking about intimacy, first thing that came to my mind was physical intimacy. The first thing that came to your mind was emotional intimacy. And so I think it's important to really talk about, when we're talking about intimacy in this episode, what are we referring to? What are we talking about? And I think that obviously two of them are emotional and then physical intimacy. So emotional intimacy, how would you define that? How would you describe that?
Oh boy, putting me on the spot. I feel like it's that, I mean, it's hard to, I haven't even thought of the words I'm going to say, but I feel like I'm going to try to use the word and the definition of the word,
Mm,
But I feel like it's when you have that deep trust, connectedness, you feel seen, like you feel like you know where I am emotionally, you
mhm.
know where I am mentally. I know where you are emotionally and mentally. Like I know what burdens you have right now. I
Yeah.
know what things are making you happy right now. I know the stresses you have,
Mhm.
and you are aware of those for me.
Yeah.
And I feel like you not only know them, but you're empathizing and caring for me in them.
And
Like
I would
that's how I would
yeah,
like
I'd agree
flesh it
with
out.
that.
That's not a definition, but that's like a taste or a tester of when
And
it's good or bad.
emotional intimacy, I would say that conversations are free flowing, natural, all of that kind of stuff when you have good emotional
There's not
intimacy. There's
strain.
not
There's not some
strain.
topic that you're skirting
Yes.
around. There's not an elephant in the room.
And it's interesting when emotional intimacy isn't, when you don't have emotional intimacy. For me, the way I describe it is we could be laying next to each other in the bed, and it's this weirdest thing, but it genuinely
Don't know where you're going
feels
with
like
this.
we are like 10 feet apart, even if we're right
Oh,
next to each other.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I don't
Yeah, like
know.
when you're
That's
just I think that happens sometimes if you just have this like even just simmering conflict or a
yeah.
tension and it's just like man, there's a wall between us and it feels
Yes.
thick. Like it's like a tension that you could cut with a knife.
Yeah, no, for sure. And
Yeah.
so that's emotional intimacy. Then I would say there's also spiritual intimacy,
Mhm.
which is when you are praying together, you are discussing spiritual topics together, maybe reading scripture together, you're talking about the sermon, going to church together, serving together. I would say
More
that's
important,
all
sorry, as you're talking, I'm like that is a lot of the things that you can do without having spiritual intimacy with God.
okay. Yeah. Oh, good point.
Like
Good
a
point.
lot
I
of
was
those
thinking
things
of
you
it.
said are like
Yeah.
things that you're doing.
Yep.
I think that it starts most importantly with your relationship with the Lord.
Yeah.
And then that flows, and it's not just talking about spiritual things and talking about the sermon. It's like praying for each other and engaging in the spiritual disciplines together and having your intimacy with the Lord overflow into your relational intimacy. I just think a lot of times
Yeah.
we miss it and
That's
we
a good
think
point.
like, oh, well, we're talking about spiritual things and we're talking about God. And you can become like academics together for Jesus that are totally not in deep relationship with
Yeah.
him. So anyway,
Yeah,
just
no,
wanna
that's a good point. Yeah, so that's spiritual intimacy, and then obviously physical intimacy. Found chicken wow wow.
you wanna flesh that out or no? Just having regular
Well, no,
I
I would.
didn't mean to say intercourse. Intimacy.
No, but I would say that obviously what comes to mind when you think physical intimacy is obviously sex, but I would say more than just the
Yeah, I was gonna say
mechanics of sex. What were you gonna say?
there's like physical intimacy that comes before that. Like if you can
Yeah.
have physical intimacy if you're postpartum and not able to have sex, It's like hugging and kissing and
Mhm.
like all the things that I mean, all the things that come with being
Yeah.
married to each other, like having that freedom in marriage. And so it's like just all the
I guess
things leading up to
when I think of
sex.
physical intimacy, especially in marriage, the reason why I think of sex is because like physical intimacy, I don't know, and maybe this is the wrong way to think about it, but I think of that as something you really only have with your spouse.
Okay, but I'm thinking like you're not kissing not your spouse.
I'm thinking you could kiss your kid, like if
Oh,
Emery a
okay.
kid,
It's a
like
different kind of kiss. I'm
I
talking about like
know.
romantic physical
Okay.
intimacy. Things that lead up to sex
Yeah.
is what I'm talking about.
Okay.
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 You didn't need to make it weird.
No, but I'm just saying, I don't know.
Yeah, like no. I think it's like there's a very big difference between yeah. I don't know how to define it, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The
But physical intimacy where you like feel connected physically.
Right.
Yeah.
And romantically. Okay. So those are the different kinds for the sake of this. So I think we were talking about it a little bit. I think that the first step, if you're in this place, is kind of having an open conversation about what is the root of this? Where did the drifting
The
start?
first step of if you don't feel
If you don't feel
intimate,
if you feel disconnected and
disconnected,
you want to reconnect, you want to foster more intimacy, any of
intimacy
these
is
intimacies.
lacking.
Yeah.
Where do you go? Where do you start?
You start with, okay, what's causing this? Is this because, for us, example this week, like, is it because this has been an off week where we've had lots of work, lots of changes in our routine, we've had illness,
sick.
we've had things like that.
Yeah.
Like, is that what's causing this? Because we haven't had, we're strained and we haven't had that time to connect. Okay, simple fix, you know? Like, let's just sit down, let's carve out some time to have a little bit
Drink
of
some
rest.
vitamin C and
Yeah, get some elderberry syrup in the crock pot currently.
Yes, I smell it.
You smell it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I started it. And is it that? Or is this like, is there some kind of thing we feel unresolved about? This is going to take, I will admit, this is like assuming that there is the health in your marriage to have a vulnerable, honest conversation. A lot of things we talk about on here are rooted in having that health.
Yes. And developing that health.
Developing that health. Yeah, it's not
give and develop that health.
For sure. It's not, we're not saying like, oh, well, we only can help you if you are but like taking the steps that are needed. Most things are going just because reality is that so many things are as simple as that, as simple as being able to have a vulnerable, honest conversation. And so, yeah, I think you start there. You diagnose. Is it we're ships in the night because we're just too busy, or
there's lingering conflict that we haven't resolved,
or has there been some violation of trust that you need to root out,
which again would be part of conflict or something like that,
right? Some kind of like negative tension there in the marriage,
feeling misunderstood, or all of those kind of things that just even if it's not some explicit conflict, do you have unmet expectations that you haven't voiced? That's not conflict, but where it's like if you have this image in your head of what the night was going to look like, and then that wasn't that.
Or like, the comparison game of like, well, Instagram wives or Instagram husbands do this, and that, and like this, it builds this underlying resentment. I mean, these things, I think it sometimes takes processing through these things to realize like, this is where I'm coming from.
Yep.
Another one that came to mind is if one of you is spiritually struggling a lot, that can sometimes lead to tension in the marriage of like, that affects a lot of things. If somebody's having a crisis of faith, or even less dramatically, just drifting, it's like that can, especially if you built your marriage, like if that was the foundation of your marriage, then that's going to cause tensions, and we hope it would be the foundation of your marriage, or at least become that. And so anyway, so diagnosing what the root is, and then processing through that of like, okay, now what steps can we take?
I was just going to say, I think that this is really important to actually diagnose the issue. And the reason why is oftentimes we're given surface level fixes to intimacy issues. If, you're feeling disconnected, a date night is going to fix that.
Or I think like, we just don't have sex enough. And it's like, we'll buy some lingerie, or, just buy her flowers and make her feel special. And it's like, that is not going to cover up if she has this deep belief that you don't think she's beautiful, or that she doesn't feel emotionally connected. Like she feels like you're absent from your marriage. Like, I'm sorry, you could buy her a 5-course dinner and all of her favorite things, and that is not a Band-Aid for this like emotional.
That's not a fix. It's only a Band-Aid, I would say.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Or it's like an attempt.
An ineffective Band-Aid.
Yeah.
So it is important to get to that root,
and
because so often you'll Google or whatever it is, you'll hear a sermon, and it's this like top down. It's this outside, like you said, it's a surface level solution, which sometimes maybe those things help, but so often there is a root that honestly could ultimately lead to so much of a simpler fix and so much of a less exhausting cycle of trying to do all these things that are not. We talked about it when we talked about loving your spouse so they want to feel loved. It's like, similarly, if you're continuing to like write love notes and they just want you to clean the kitchen, like you're exhausting yourself doing something that isn't, you're just missing it. And so same thing here. Like, you could be missing you have good intentions, but you're missing what is causing this lack of intimacy.
Yeah. And
So, yeah.
I just go back to that's the importance of diagnosing it, because if you don't truly diagnose it, you're going to try all these quick fixes or all the classic advice that you would hear. And then maybe it solves it for a night or a day or a week,
Mhm.
but ultimately you're going to end up right back in that same spot because you haven't actually addressed the underlying issues and the underlying problems. Like, I just go back to it. I think I was listening to a podcast once that talked about the 10 richest men in the world and saying that between the 10 of them, there was a cumulative of 13 or 14 divorces or something like that. And just what sticks out in my mind, if they had all of the resources to do all of the date nights, to go on all of the trips, to do anything that money could buy, the 10 richest men in the world, yet there's still so many divorces because ultimately the underlying issues, the underlying problems within those marriages weren't actually resolved by money.
Money. No, for sure. Um, yeah. I had a thought and it escaped me. But so once you've I was that playing the long game. We talk about playing the
Mhm.
long game all the time. And so much of playing the long game is getting to the root cause. It's not just doing those quick fixes or those
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, we don't need to keep beating a dead horse, but
Mhm.
I think you get the longevity of it being effective over time and building a new healthy just like way forward in your marriage when you uproot those negative things versus just like trying to tack on some date nights or
Yep.
tack on some
Yeah.
whatever it is. Okay, so you've gotten to the root, whatever that is. And again, we're not taking you like step by step. This is best done in community with other with
Yeah.
so we're not going to say like if it was this, we're not giving you your like exact next steps.
Here's your
But I
product.
think in what yeah,
Here's your product.
as much as I'd love to do that, that's not the point of this episode. So you've kind of gotten to your root cause. I think that it, broadly speaking, takes now smaller steps of intentionality. Again, not
Playing the
those
long
like go
game.
have a date night, but whatever the root is. So if it
Or
is
have a weekend away, which again, those aren't bad things. I
yeah, for
really
sure.
want to express that having a date night is not a bad thing. Getting away for a weekend is not a bad thing. We just did a marriage retreat where we
So
got
yeah,
away
that's what
just
I
the
was going
two
to
of
say
us.
is if the root cause was we have just not had any alone time
Yeah.
lately. Like everything feels fine. We just haven't had any alone time. Like we haven't even been able to like that's how it felt when we went on our marriage retreat. It was the first time I'd been able to have a conversation without being interrupted
Yeah.
in so long because even post bedtime, it was like we're tired. Like
Yeah.
bedtime had been dragging on. And so it was like anytime we were just having a normal conversation, it was so interrupted, it almost made you crazy. And so that was
Or it did make you
it
crazy.
did make me a little crazy. That for us was so life-giving because that's simply what we needed at that
Yeah.
time or wanted. It's
Yeah.
never a complete necessity. But
But I just go back to that idea of a lot of times people cannot afford or cannot have
Right.
those getaways, and you don't need those getaways in order to foster intimacy.
yeah, we could have achieved that by turning on a movie one day and having 3
Mhm.
hours of conversation,
Yeah.
something like that. So yeah, that to say, I was just saying like some of those things you listed of having a date night, that could be
Yeah.
the next step if that was the underlying issue. But if it was this conflict or trust thing,
Or I don't feel connected or something like that.
why do you not feel connected? That's
Oh,
what I'm saying. So,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
if it was you don't feel connected because you feel like you're bearing all the parenting responsibilities and your spouse isn't, okay, well, going on a date night is not going to solve that.
Yeah.
Taking the next step of, like, how can I take something off your plate
Yeah.
is. So, sometimes the next step could be a date night. Sometimes the next step is something else. So, once you diagnose, that gives you that next step. So, we're talking about, like,
Yeah.
start small. Don't try to overhaul everything, but start with those small next. I mean, for example, I'm trying to think of some other things that
I would
could
think
cause disconnection.
Okay, so for another one is like a classic one is I only receive physical touch when it's leading
Sexual,
into
yeah.
sex or
Yeah, like
sexual.
I that's the thing for me. Sometimes it's like, I just want you to hug me
Yeah.
platonically, like
Yeah.
where I just want to like feel comforted and, all of that without it needing to lead somewhere. Where like, especially just like right when you get home from work or something. Like
Mhm.
obviously it's not going anywhere right then. We got the kids around. But so yeah, I think that is so having the next small step would be making intentionality or having intentionality to do that.
Mhm.
Yeah, so whatever that is for you. And then I think that when you have I'm sorry, were you gonna go somewhere?
No, you're good.
in my mind, so maybe this is just how my brain works. It's not linear. Life is so much more complicated than linear always. But I kind of think of starting with rebuilding spiritual intimacy first, because I think that especially as believers, as Christians, we believe that the Holy Spirit, like everything is done more faithfully and effectively when it's done through the Holy Spirit. And so cultivating your relationship with the Lord, investing in your relationship with the Lord, investing in your relationship with each other spiritually is going to be the best starting place.
Yeah.
Even if that isn't necessarily the root cause, I think starting there, starting in prayer, starting in...
Oftentimes, even if we don't think it's the root cause, it might be, even if we wouldn't
Yeah.
admit that. Where one or both of you, your relationship with the Lord has grown stagnant, you're not pursuing the Lord, and that's then overflows into your life.
For sure.
Yeah.
And so I think of spiritual and then emotional. And that's probably the female perspective, because generally speaking, women are going to feel much more desiring of sex and physical intimacy if they feel emotionally cared for.
Yeah.
And so I think of the emotional intimacy next of let's strengthen our relationship and our connectedness and feeling known and seen and loved by each other.
Yeah.
And then the physical will come more naturally. And of course, sometimes there are issues there. There have been, we have a whole episode on that in the past of like even physical things that prevent that from just magically being fixed by emotional and spiritual intimacy. But for the most part for us, I feel like that's kind of the order where I feel the most natural progression.
No, for sure. And I think it starts with that honest conversation. It starts with addressing spiritual intimacy. And I think, that's reflected in the fact of in our conflict resolution plan. We've talked about that before on a podcast episode of the importance of having it and why we have one and all that kind of stuff. It starts with prayer. When we're starting with conflict of, hey, let's stop, let's pray. Let's make sure we're bringing this to the Lord, and then, looking at each other, reminding each other we're on the same team,
That's
looking each other in the eyes, that fosters that emotional intimacy. And then we go into the conversation and the conflict and everything like that. And I think that's
and then we wrap it up
a
with
natural,
sex.
there you go.
I'm just
Exactly.
kidding.
Exactly. That's part, you know what? Let's add that to the conflict resolution
we
plan.
know a couple that's like part of their resolution plan. You remember that?
Yeah, I actually do remember we did have a couple friend where that's actually kind of how they started it, because they felt more connected.
Oh, absolutely not.
It was
that
like,
could
hey, we
never
feel
be
like
step
we're
one.
disconnected and we're like frustrated. Let's start with that. And then we feel more connected for the conversation. It's like,
all
that's
power to them,
interesting.
but not a chance for me. No way.
But yeah, I remember that. I was like, that's funny.
Because I remember they were struggling like postpartum, not being able to
Yes, because that was
they couldn't get over their conflict. I was like,
yes, because how they would get over their conflict.
I cannot relate. Anyway, okay, let's wrap it up. You got to go back to work.
No, yeah, we got like 20 minutes, or 10 minutes, 10 minutes,
I thought
sorry.
you to go back to work at 6.
Yeah, we'll see.
It's all right. We're keeping it super professional here.
Yeah, but I'm trying to think if there's anything else. We're actually in our studio,
and this is our full-time job.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I would want to add or express the importance of. I think also too, here's something I do want to add, is that trying to find the balance for when it comes to physical intimacy, like as a guy, you want to do everything in your power to obviously start with the spiritual intimacy, start with emotional intimacy. And obviously, if there are other hangups or frustrations, if, your wife feels like she handles most of the chores, stepping up and taking care of the chores, stepping up and being a present dad and taking care of the kids and being a father, not having that mentality that every time you watch the kids, that's babysitting. No, that's being a father. And thankfully, I think that's kind of, that mentality is going away. I just heard it the other day, like someone referring to it unironically as babysitting. And so I just wanted to throw that in there. But
goodness gracious.
Yeah.
It's 2026, people.
So, but stepping up in those ways. So I think there's the importance of, again, focusing on how you can serve and love your spouse. We talk a lot about this in ways that they, feel loved. I think I would also add too, like there are times, and it wouldn't be like a mandate or anything like that, where when it comes to physical intimacy, that one of you may not feel like completely in the mood of, oh yes, I'm just so ready to jump right into it and have, really passionate.
Sometimes it's doing the thing that doesn't necessarily sound like the most desirable thing to foster that. Not
Yeah.
obviously there's a lot of nuance there.
Yes,
For sure,
100%.
that
And
we're
you
not
can't.
going to go into at this
Yes.
point because we're wrapping up. But it if there is safety and general health in your relationship, sometimes it is just a little bit of discipline of like, I'm going to do the thing that doesn't sound desirable. And I think a
Well,
lot of times you foster that desire throughout.
but it
There's
goes.
like reactive desire. I've learned about that
Yeah.
versus like initial
desire. And I think it's important to note and it's important to stress that idea of we accept that in so many other areas
sure.
of life of, I don't desire to go to the gym, but I'm going to be disciplined and go to the gym anyway. And I know that's going to be good for me. I know that's going to be healthy. I don't, I desire this sweet or this treat or something like that, but I'm going to withhold from it because I know that ultimately in the long run, it's better. There's so many times.
Intimacy, a lot of times that we
Yes.
Yeah.
And again, in other areas of life in general, right? When it comes to, I only want to read my Bible when I feel like it. And it's like, no, we should be disciplined in doing that. And again, like you said, there is so much nuance there of it's not just a justification of, every time that your spouse wants sex, that you need to have
we're
sex.
also speaking to, we're speaking to you making a personal decision, not you telling your spouse.
Exactly. You feeling
that's a very clear. So that's the
into
single
that.
bit of nuance that we'll go into is that we are only speaking to you willfully.
Yeah.
Doing something that doesn't necessarily feel initially like you're in the mood for it, not speaking to telling your spouse to do
because going back to this idea of ultimately, I think it's in marriage, but then when it comes to intimacy, the best marriages, intimacy, all kinds of intimacy, not just physical intimacy, but the best marriages happen when each spouse is genuinely seeking to sacrificially serve the other more than they're looking after their own interests. So like I am looking out for the interests of Zan. I'm seeking to serve Zan more than myself. And Zan is seeking to serve me more than herself. And that's incredibly difficult. And if we're honest with ourselves, most of the time we don't meet that standard. But that's where we can cultivate the best marriages. And I think the same is true in intimacy of, hey, if Zan really values physical intimacy when not sexual of when I come home from work and giving her a hug, I'm going to strive to meet that need or meet that desire. If Zan really values a clean house at the end of the night, even when I'm tired, I'm going to go ahead and try to meet that need, meet that desire, because that's just a way for me to love her like Christ loved the church. And I think that it goes both ways. And I think I just wanted to end with that because when it comes to fostering intimacy, yes, this is all really good. Address the root cause. We need to do that. Talk about it. Come up with a solution. How are we going to address this? Have weekly marriage meetings. Zan and I talk about, I think that fosters so much intimacy for us. Have a daily check-in, a high-low buffalo. That's going to foster intimacy as well. Those are all practical things that you can do is weekly marriage meeting, daily check-in, regular time together, date nights, all that kind of stuff. Praying together. All those things are practical ways and good ways that you can foster intimacy. But I think it starts kind of not only just with that spiritual intimacy component, but also that component of seeking to have that mentality of I am going to seek to serve and love my spouse above myself.
Yeah. That's good.
So, one degree shift.
1 degree shift is to have that conversation of what is driving the disconnection.
Or even if you're not disconnected right now, when you do feel disconnected, what is typically the driver of it? Because what would you say that would be for us? I have my answer.
I would say just missing each other, busyness. What would you say?
I would say that for me,
physical intimacy.
No, conflict. Like unresolved conflict, like when we have those unresolved conflict, that's when I feel the most disconnected. Like, busyness, it's hard, but I feel like we navigate that pretty well with our rhythms.
Busyness often leads to conflict. Like, it depends. Stress leads to conflict.
Yeah, stress
and
would
then the
necessarily
conflict
busyness.
Leads to, that's fair.
But I think that is primarily from conflict because I think that we lead pretty busy lives, but for the most part, we have good rhythms to try to navigate it. It's when we have that unresolved conflict or when we don't handle conflict well, that's what that leads to.
That's true. I think that is true because ultimately it's like, okay, every single week of our life is
busy.
very full.
Yeah.
I think it's, when we get chippy with each other.
Yeah, exactly. We're both can be stubborn and hard-headed and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. All right. We'll catch you next week, 1 Degree fam.
Love y'all.
Thanks for tuning in for this episode of the 1 Degree Podcast. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And we'd be so appreciative if you take just a few seconds to leave a rating and a quick review. We love to hear your feedback, and those ratings really do help make it easier for others to find this podcast.
And if you want to continue this chat or share your takeaways, we'd love to hear from you. Head on over to our Instagram at the 1 Degree Podcast and leave a comment or send us a DM. We can't wait to hear from you. Catch you next week, 1 Degree fam.